She said I'd never be anyone, dumped me before my bar exams, said she couldn't date potential. For years later, I built a law firm. She applied for a job there. Didn't know I owned it. I gave her the job, entry level. $38,000. No window. I'm sitting in my corner office on the 42nd floor, looking down at the city I've conquered, and I can't help but smile. Because somewhere in this building, 20 floors below me, Madison Clark is filing discovery documents in a windowless cubicle, making less than a year than I spent on my car payments. And she still doesn't know that the potential she walked away from now signs her paychecks. Let me take you back to where this all began. 4 years ago, I was David Chun, third-year law student at Georgetown, living on ramen noodles and student loans. I had big dreams, sure, but my bank account had bigger problems. I was clerking at a small firm for $12 an hour, studying until 2 a.m. every night, and planning to take the bar exam in July. Madison Clark was everything I thought I wanted. She was a marketing coordinator at a tech startup, making $65,000 a year, which felt like a fortune to me then. She had the perfect Instagram life. Weekend trips to Napa, designer handbags, a BMW lease she could barely afford but flaunted like a trophy. She was beautiful, ambitious, and completely out of my league. Or so I thought. We met at a mutual friend's party in Georgetown. I was a guy in the corner nursing a beer I'd bought with quarters, wearing a suit from Men's Warehouse that was 2 sizes too big. She was a girl everyone gravitated toward, telling stories about her company's latest campaign, dropping names of restaurants I'd never heard of. But somehow we connected. Maybe it was my humor, or the way I listened when she talked about her dreams of running her own agency someday. We started dating, and for 8 months, I lived in a bubble where I thought love could bridge any gap. I should have seen the signs earlier. The way she suggests we stay in, whenever I couldn't afford the restaurant she wanted to try. How she'd introduce me to her friends as David. He's still in school. Emphasis on the still. The subtle eye rolls when I talk about my cases, or my plans for after graduation. The breaking point came 3 weeks before my bar exam. I was stressed beyond belief, working 16-hour days between studying and my clerkship. I was tired, broke, and running on fumes. Madison had been distant for weeks, and I finally asked her what was wrong. David, she said, sitting across from me at the coffee shop near her apartment, the one where a latte cost more than my lunch budget. I've been thinking about us, about our future. I leaned forward, hopeful. Maybe she was going to tell me she believed in me, that she'd wait for me to get established. I can't do this anymore, she continued, not meeting my eyes. I'm 26, David. I need stability. I need someone who can take care of me, not someone I'm constantly worrying about. I'm going to pass the bar, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm going to get a good job. I have interviews lined up. With small firms that pay $50,000 a year, she interrupted. David, you're a dreamer. You talk about starting your own practice someday like it's guaranteed. But I've seen your student loans. I've seen how you live. I can't date potential anymore. I need actual success. She stood up, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floor. I'm sorry, but I can't be with someone who might make it someday. I need someone who already has. And just like that, she was gone. Left me sitting there with my cold coffee and my shattered ego, 3 weeks before the most important exam of my life. I won't lie. Her words nearly broke me. For 2 days, I couldn't focus on studying. I kept replaying the conversation, wondering if she was right. Maybe I was just a dreamer. Maybe I was destined to be another struggling lawyer in a city full of them. But then something shifted. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was spite, but I decided to prove her wrong. Not to win her back. That ship had sailed. But to prove to myself that I was worth more than her shallow assessment. I threw myself into studying with a vengeance. I passed the bar exam with one of the highest scores in the state. I took a job at a mid-sized firm for $85,000. Not spectacular, but respectable. And I started planning. For the next 4 years, I lived like a monk. No fancy dinners, no expensive vacations, no new car. Every dollar went toward my goal. Started my own firm. I worked 70-hour weeks, building relationships, learning the business side of law, and saving every penny I specialize in corporate litigation, the unglamorous stuff that pays the bills. I was good at it, really good. I started taking on bigger cases, winning settlements that put me on the map. By my second year, I was making $200,000. By my third, I was making $350,000. I bought a small office space in downtown D.C., hired 2 associates, and Chun and Associates was born. We focused on mid-market corporate clients, the companies that were too big for small firms but too small for the white shoe firms to care about. It was a perfect niche. The firm grew. We landed a few high-profile cases, won some impressive settlements, and suddenly we were the go-to firm for a certain type of client. I hired more associates, then partners. We moved to a bigger office, then a bigger one still. By year 4, Chun and Associates had become Chun, Park and Associates, occupying 3 floors of a downtown high-rise. We had 47 employees, including 23 attorneys. I was pulling in 7 figures a year, and the firm was valued at $15 million. I had everything Madison said I'd never have, and I was about to find out if the universe had a sense of irony. It was a Tuesday morning in October when my HR director, Janet, knocked on my office door. She was holding a stack of resumes, her expression amused. "David, you need to see this," she said, placing one resume on top of the others. "Remember you asked me to handle the hiring for the new paralegal position?" I glanced at the resume, and my heart stopped. Madison Clark, marketing coordinator at 3 different startups over the past 4 years. Bachelor's degree in communications. Currently unemployed. She's applying for the paralegal position, Janet continued. No legal experience, but she says she's eager to transition into law and willing to start entry level. Her salary requirement is $45,000. I stared at the resume, reading every word. Madison Clark, the woman who dumped me for not having enough money, was applying for a $38,000 job at my firm. The irony was so perfect it felt scripted. "What do you think?" Janet asked. She's obviously overqualified for the position, but she might be desperate enough to take it. I made a decision that would change everything. "Set up an interview," I said, "but don't mention my name. Just say she'll be interviewed by the hiring manager." Over the next week, I did my research. Madison's LinkedIn told the story of 4 years of career struggles. The tech startup she'd worked for when we were dating had gone under 6 months after we broke up. She'd bounced between 3 different companies, each position lasting less than 18 months. Her last job had ended 4 months ago when her company had restructured. Corporate speak for layoffs. She was 30 now, single according to her Facebook, living in a studio apartment in Adams Morgan that probably cost more than she could afford. The BMW was long gone, replaced by a Honda Civic that had seen better days. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The interview was scheduled for 2 p.m. on a Friday. I positioned myself in the lobby at 1:45, pretending to review documents while keeping an eye on the elevator. She walked in at 1:58, and I have to admit, she still looked good. A little older, a little tired around the eyes, but still the same Madison who'd broken my heart 4 years ago. She was wearing a black blazer that looked expensive but was probably from Zara, carrying a leather portfolio that was definitely a knockoff. She checked in with reception, and I watched her fidget with her phone while she waited. She looked nervous, the way I used to look when I was desperately hoping for a break. Janet appeared right on time. "Madison Clark?" "Hi, I'm Janet Williams, HR Director. Thanks for coming in." Madison smiled, the same dazzling smile that had won me over years ago. "Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really excited about the possibility of joining your team." They disappeared into the elevator, and I felt a mix of anticipation and something that might have been guilt, but I pushed the guilt down. She'd made her choice 4 years ago. Now I was making mine. The interview lasted 45 minutes. Janet called me afterward to debrief. "She's definitely desperate," Janet said, "willing to take the full-time position at $38,000 with minimal benefits. She tried to negotiate up to $42,000, but backed down when I said the budget was firm. She really needs this job, David. What did you think of her?" I asked, Honestly, she's smart, well-spoken, and probably capable of more than filing and basic research. But she has no legal experience. And she came across as someone who thinks she's doing us a favor by considering the position. A little entitled, if you ask me. Perfect. Madison Clark, who'd once told me I'd never be anyone, was about to start working for me at barely above minimum wage. Hire her, I said. Start date Monday. Madison's first day was everything I'd hoped for and more. I watched from security cameras as she was giving her tour of the office. Her face fell when she saw her workspace, a windowless cubicle in the middle of the paralegal pool, surrounded by recent college graduates who were making the same salary she was. She was assigned to Sarah Kim, one of our junior associates, who would supervise her work. Sarah was 25, sharp as a tack, and made $120,000 a year. The same Sarah who'd started as a summer intern 2 years ago and was now on the partner track. For the first week, I stayed away from the lower floors. I watched Madison to the security feeds, seeing her slowly realize that this wasn't the glamorous legal career she'd imagined. She was filing documents, making copies, and doing basic research that any first-year law student could handle. I could see her frustration growing, the way she glanced around the office, probably wondering why she was stuck in a cubicle while younger people had offices with windows, the way she'd check her phone constantly, probably hoping for a better offer from somewhere else. But the better offer never came, because in a city full of qualified paralegals, Madison Clark was just another unemployed marketing coordinator trying to change careers. The second week, I decided it was time to make my presence known. I started taking the elevator to the paralegal floor, walking through their section on my way to meetings. I made sure to pass by Madison's cubicle, but I never acknowledged her. I was just another suit in an expensive building. It was Friday of her second week when she finally saw me. I was talking to Sarah about a case when I heard a sharp intake of breath behind me. I turned, and there was Madison, frozen at her desk, staring at me like she'd seen a ghost. "David," she whispered. I turned to face her fully, letting her see the $3,000 suit, the Rolex, the confidence that came with owning everything around us. "Hello, Madison," I said calmly. "How are you settling in?" She stood up slowly, her face cycling to confusion, recognition, and dawning horror. "You work here?" "I own here," I corrected. "Chun and Associates. Although it's Chun Park and Associates now." I watched as the pieces fell into place. The name of the firm, the building, the reason she'd been hired for a position she was overqualified for. Her face went white. You're the David Chun?" she stammered. "I'm the David Chun who passed the bar exam 3 weeks after you told me I'd never be anyone," I said, my voice steady. "The David Chun who built this firm from nothing. The David Chun who just gave you a job at $38,000 a year, because apparently that's what your potential is worth." Sarah was looking back and forth between us, clearly sensing the tension, but not understanding it. The other paralegals had stopped working and were openly staring. "David, Madison started, but I held up a hand. "Welcome to Chun Park and Associates, Madison. I hope you find the work fulfilling." I turned to Sarah. "Sarah, could we continue our discussion in my office?" As we walked away, I heard Madison sink back into her chair. I didn't look back. The next few days were delicious torture. Madison was a wreck. She arrived at work looking like she hadn't slept, spent her breaks in the bathroom, and jumped every time someone walked by her cubicle. She was clearly wrestling with whether to quit or try to salvage the situation. The office gossip mill was working overtime. Word had spread that there was history between Madison and me, though no one knew the details. Some of the younger associates were openly speculating about what had happened, while the partners were more discreet, but equally curious. Madison finally made her move on Wednesday. She sent an email requesting a meeting with me. I let her sweat for 2 days before responding. "My assistant will find time in my schedule," I replied. "Please come prepared with specific questions about your role and responsibilities." The meeting was scheduled for Friday at 4 p.m. Madison arrived 5 minutes early, looking like she'd spent the week planning exactly what to say. She was wearing the same blazer from her interview, but now it looked cheap against the backdrop of my corner office. "David," she began, "I think we should talk about what happened." I leaned back in my chair, my expression neutral. "I'm not sure what you mean. This is a professional meeting about your performance and career development." She flinched. "Please don't play games. You know why I'm here." "I know you're here because you're struggling in your current position, and you're hoping our personal history will somehow benefit your career," I said. "But I'm not sure why you'd think that's appropriate." Madison's composure cracked. "David, I made a mistake. I was young, I was scared, You were honest," I interrupted. "You told me exactly what you thought of my potential, and you were right to leave. You needed someone who already had success, not someone who was going to build it." "But I was wrong about you," she said desperately. "You did build something amazing. You're successful. I'm the same person I was 4 years ago," I said. "The same person you walked away from because he wasn't good enough. The only thing that's changed is my bank account." Madison was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "I know I hurt you. I know I was wrong. But surely you can understand. I was looking for security, and you were such a risk. And now you're the risk," I said quietly. "You're 30, unemployed, desperate enough to take a job you're overqualified for. You're exactly where I was 4 years ago, except I was building something. You're just surviving." She sobbed harder. "David, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. "Madison, I'm not going to fire you. You're doing adequate work, and you need this job. But I'm not going to pretend we're friends, and I'm not going to give you special treatment because we used a date." "But we could try again," she said desperately. "We could—" "No," I said, turning back to her. "We couldn't, because you didn't leave me for someone better. You left me for someone richer. And now that I'm richer, you think that changes something fundamental about who we are?" I walked back to my desk. "You have a choice, Madison. You can stay here, do your job, and build a career in law. Or you can quit and find something else. But either way, you're going to do it as Madison Clark, paralegal, not as David Chen's ex-girlfriend." She sat there for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. Then she stood up, squared her shoulders, and looked me in the eye. "You've changed," she said. "You used to be kind." "I used to be poor," I replied. Funny how those two things were related. Madison stayed. She wiped her tears, walked back to her cubicle, and got back to work. And to her credit, she threw herself into the job. She learned quickly, worked hard, and slowly earned the respect of her colleagues. Over the next few months, I watched her transform. The entitlement faded, replaced by genuine hunger. She started taking night classes to get her paralegal certification. She volunteered for the difficult cases, the ones that required long hours and meticulous attention to detail. She was becoming the person I'd hoped she could be 4 years ago. The person she might have been if she believed in potential instead of just reality. 6 months after she started, Sarah Kim recommended Madison for a promotion to senior paralegal. The position came with a raise to $52,000 and a small office. Still no window, but 4 walls and a door. I approved the promotion without comment. A year later, Madison had become one of our most reliable paralegals. She'd earned her certification, was taking pre-law courses at night, and had started talking about applying to law school. She'd also started dating one of the junior associates, a guy named Mike who made $95,000 a year and drove a Toyota Camry. I watched them together sometimes, laughing in the break room or walking to lunch. They looked happy. He looked at her the way I used to look at her, like she was the most interesting person in the world. She looked at him like he was enough. The real revenge, I realized, wasn't making her work for me. It wasn't paying her a fraction of what I made or watching her struggle in a job she was overqualified for. The real revenge was showing her what she walked away from and then making her earn her way back to it. Because Madison Clark, the woman who'd once told me I'd never be anyone, was now working 60-hour weeks, studying for the LSAT, and dreaming of starting her own practice someday. She was dating a man who made good money but wasn't rich, who had potential but wasn't guaranteed success. She was dating the person I used to be, and she was becoming the person I'd always known she could be. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply becoming who you were always meant to be, and letting the people who doubted you figure out how to catch up. I still see Madison around the office. She nods respectfully when we pass in the hallway, calls me Mr. Chun in meetings, and has never again mentioned our personal history. She's professional, hardworking, and completely focused on her future. And sometimes, late at night when I'm leaving the office, I see her at her desk, studying for law school while reviewing case files. She looks tired but determined, the way I used to look when I was building something from nothing. The woman who once told me I'd never be anyone is now working 16-hour days, hoping to become someone herself. She's learning what I learned 4 years ago. That success isn't about who you know or how much money you start with. It's about who you become when everything is on the line. And as I walk past her desk on my way to the parking garage, where my Tesla is waiting next to her Honda Civic, I can't help but smile. Because Madison Clark is finally dating potential. She's just not dating mine anymore.